Well, Kristen, welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast.
Thanks, Robbie. I am so happy to be here and to be with you.
Yeah, we were just saying off the call, we spent quite a lot of time together, but I don't think we've spoken for about 18 months. So it's fun to be in this space with you. And I'm really curious to see what you're up to and to get into a conversation about your work and life and coaching.
I'm excited to tell you about whatever you want to know.
Yeah. Well, let's start.
How about it?
Go on, what you have at it? Cool.
How about it?
So yeah, one of the ways that I've been starting some of these calls is to go to do you remember when you first heard about coaching, about this thing that we do?
Well, it's interesting because I actually worked with a coach starting in 1999, 2000, something like that. And that was really before people were calling themselves coaches. And I remember I was in Florida with my brother, and there was a woman there, a friend of his wife was there, and she was talking about being a life coach, becoming a life coach, and I was like, oh, I hate that.
What did you hate?
I've grown to actually be okay with that, the term life coach, but for a long time it really was like, ooh, it felt, something about it felt, I don't know why, just, there's something about it that has rubbed me wrong. And now I'm starting to embrace it. But when she said that, I was like, life coach. It just feels a little weak for what it is. I think it's really incredibly powerful work. And for some reason, the word of life coach just feels like it doesn't do what we do justice. So I generally don't refer to myself as a life coach, although a lot of people choose to refer to me as that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I get a similar thing. You're a life coach, right? People will say to me, and I will say, well, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, I've never described myself as a life coach to anyone, except when I've said I work as a coach, explain what it is, and they go, oh, a life coach. And then I kind of shrug and accept it. But yeah, I get called it a lot as well. People who aren't coaches seem to really like that term.
And maybe it doesn't bother them as much. I mean, I think there was a time where it was kind of a woo-woo weird thing. And I think the world is really starting to embrace this idea of coaching. Feels like it's becoming part of the vernacular on some level that it wasn't before. Yeah. And like I said, in 1999, when I started working with Mona, who was my coach for 12 years, she did not call herself a coach. We didn't have words to describe her. We didn't know what to call her.
So how did you find her and how did you end up doing work with her?
So in 1999, I went on a yoga retreat to Maui. And when I was there, I met a friend of mine, Marty, and she was like, you have to meet Mona. Like, Mona's going to change your life. And Marty it was a pretty deep retreat, and we had some pretty deep conversations. And she's like, I think that she could really support you in some stuff that you've gone through and that you're currently working through. And I was like, all right. A horrible job of explaining what Mona did, because what Mona did was it was hard to articulate. And so I was like, maybe. And I really loved Marty, and I thought she was an amazing person. Like, well, if this woman thinks that I should meet this other person, like, maybe I should consider it. And so I called Mona when I got back, and she had like a wait list. Every coach's dream. She had a wait list, and she actually saw a client on the hour, every day for like 8 to 9 hours a day. It was very different than the way many of us do coaching now. I don't know how she did it. I mean, insane. So I called, and like there was a wait list, and then suddenly they had a slot for me, like, to come in and see her, and you had to see her for 2 hours instead of 1. It was $100 an hour. So it was a conversation with her, and I was like, God, that felt like a lot of money back in 1999. I'm like, oh, $200. I don't want to do it. And then but I did. I was hemmed and you have no idea like what you're like getting yourself into. And so
Kristen, sorry, I'm going to have to stop. Your sound is dropping in and out. I'm not sure if it's my end or if it's yours, but it's just, okay. I was going to let it go, but it kept happening.
Like, how badly is it going in and out?
Well, it's like like a couple of times we've just lost a few words from my end. So
Okay, let me
it's
try
weird.
this.
It's weird because it didn't really happen before we started.
I'm
Thanks,
gonna
word.
try. I, I just connected my mic. Like, maybe if it's more stable, it'll be better. Let's see.
Yeah. Should we
I
try
move a
again?
lot when I talk. Yeah.
Let's see what happens. I'm trying to think where we can go from. What were we just talking about? I should like
I was
how
talking
do we
about
get to Mona? Because Mona's so interesting already.
uh,
We don't want to
you
lose any of that bit of conversation.
right, and where we were was like actually it was actually a good place because it was like when I first was going to meet her.
Yeah.
I think that this is a good part.
Yeah, cool. Why don't you just go from there?
Okay.
But get the thing in
And
about
let
the
me
$200
let
an
me
hour
know
because
how.
that's cool.
Yeah, let me know how the sound is.
Yeah, I'll wave if it's going out and then we can
Okay.
do something else.
So I decided to make this $200 commitment and go to see Mona. And it literally was 2 hours that absolutely, completely changed my life.
Wow.
Like, you know how Rich Liffen often talks about like messing up people's thinking? It was like that on friggin' steroids. Like, I had no fucking idea. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Please do.
I had no idea how fucked up I was. And in 2 hours, and no, that's not true. I knew that I was fucked up. But I didn't believe, I don't think until that point, that anybody could understand my fucked upness until the 2 hours that I spent with Mona. And I was like, hallelujah. Like, somebody has actually seen me and like for who I really truly am. And in the most extraordinarily loving way possible. Like, I felt completely understood and completely accepted in like all of my messiness.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
And do you remember, like, after that conversation, what the impact for you was in day-to-day life? Like, what
Well,
changed?
I took a journey with Mona for 12 years. So
Yeah.
it was a long journey. And the only reason the journey ended was that she died.
Yeah.
So what she had me do in that first 2 hours with her was that she had me write basically 3 fuck you letters.
Yeah. Tell for people who don't know what that is. Tell us what a fuck you letter is.
Oh, it's like, dear mom, fuck you.
Yeah.
And then at that time I was like, 30 or something. And it was like 30 years of like things that I was upset about her. And it actually may not have been a fuck you. It might have been, dear mom, when I look at you, I see. When I look at you, I feel. That's another version of the fuck you for people who can't. Some people can't immediately get in touch with their anger. I'm very good at it now. I'm an expert. In fact, October was Angry October. I went to Angry October and did anger work every day. So basically, it was the fuck you to mom, fuck you to dad, and then the fuck you to myself. And the fuck you to myself was really the most revealing for me. I couldn't believe how much I hated myself. And like to hold that hatred in. I mean, look, I just get tears in my eyes just thinking about it. Like spending so much energy holding in that hatred that I had for myself and absolutely having nowhere to express that or knowing how to express it. And then being in a space where like someone was like, I could share that with somebody and they love me more because of it instead of less. It's just so crazy to me because I just had no idea. I didn't know any idea. So I think as I said initially, like that 2 hours changed my life.
Yeah. What a way to start, right?
She's like, it's
No
the do
messing
not fuck
around.
around. It's the do not fuck around club. Like if you went to Mona, I was like, we don't fuck around. Like we just fucking go to it and like here it is. Sometimes I wish that I could always be as bold as she was because she was just so bold. She had zero attachment to hurting my feelings and uh, did not hold back at all.
And what do you think if it what she wasn't held back by those things? What guided her then? How did she choose? Choose maybe the wrong language, but where did that come from? That stuff.
I think her work was like 99.9% intuition.
Yeah.
I mean, she told me things about myself that day that I had never told anybody, and I didn't tell her.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What? Really? I didn't know this." And I was like, "Wow." Right. So she used her intuition like so much in the coaching conversation. It was so masterful, and that she was that plugged in and really sitting in that place of understanding rather than judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you work with her for 12 years, and it's like no wonder, right? After you've had that conversation, and I imagine many more like it.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah.
And then I guess I'm curious. So you were doing the work with her, and then you heard about the idea of coaching, but presumably at this time, well, you weren't working as a coach. So
No,
at what point?
I was an executive at Paramount.
Right, right. And so at what point then later on, as either, and how did the idea of, I don't know whether it was doing some training or working as a coach yourself come about?
Oh, it was a long journey.
Yeah.
I mean, I took my own self-development, personal development journey, and it started before I met Mona. I was heavy into yoga and meditation, and I was doing some other things. I had done some workshops. I was working with actors at the time, and I had a boss who was teaching this really amazing course called The Mastery of Self-Expression. So I had done that. And actually, I think that course probably launched my self-development work. I was always very curious about like who I was and what I was supposed to be doing on the planet, but I was also extremely disconnected. I was very much in my addict energy, like drank a lot. I mean, drank a lot for many, many years. I come from a background of abuse, um, sexual abuse, and um, just an abusive upbringing in general, like a lot of alcoholism and so my coping mechanism starting as a young like preteen was to drink, and I lived in a community that was very much about that. So I spent most of my teens and my 20s like really shutting down, terribly shutting down, like just, I mean, on the outside was like totally presenting like I had my shit together, but on the inside just fucked up, like dark and fucked up. And that's the hardest part is like I could present like this and be like, hey, I'm like, and I was so fucked up on the inside. So kind of just to go back for a minute, like one of the reasons I started this self-development journey was when I was 21, I had like a full-blown panic attack that sent me to the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. I was in college, and I like completely had this crazy panic attack. And then it led to like many years of suffering terribly from panic disorder, really like a very severe case of it. And still having panic disorder, but like presenting like I was a normal human being. It was mostly just a war between my ears. But I was in so many ways really paralyzed by it. And so that's when I started the self-development journey.
Did you know that was why you were starting it, or was it just once you started, it became about that?
Well, I like went to a psychiatrist because I was like, I'm losing my mind because I'm either having a panic attack or I'm fearing one to come on. Like I was agoraphobic on some level. So uh, I went to a psychiatrist who couldn't get a lot. Like we didn't have the same values. So it was hard for me to like really completely relate to him, but he practiced hypnosis, and he would hypnotize me. We would never talk. I would just go to his office and he'd hypnotize me for like 6 months. And that kind of started it and kept that at bay. And I was very good at hypnosis. I was highly suggestible. So I had that ability to drop in really deep fast. which helps in this work a lot. So anyway, that kind of led to some other things, and then I started yoga and meditation and doing these other things like the mastery of self-expression that I told you about, and then uh, finally met Mona, which really was a major turning point. And because she challenged me, like nobody, I think this is the thing. It's like, even as coaches, like people are so like want to make everything nice for everybody and are so unwilling to challenge people in a way that's really edgy and might make them not like you. I think I even am challenged with that as a coach oftentimes. I think the extraordinary thing about Mona was she did not give a fuck what you thought about her. I mean, maybe she did, and she had to process it, but I think she was really good at like really not personalizing. And so she could come at coaching in such a powerful way. So what happened was I did that work with her, and I mean, it was like up to, I mean, I changed, my entire life changed. Like I ended up, getting promoted a number of times at work. I was at Paramount at the time. I ultimately remembered one of my life's purposes and left Paramount to pursue that. I had a child in a very like unplanned sort of way, which was hugely confronting. And she walked me through that. She walked me through starting my company. She walked me through business partnerships. Like what we did, the work was so expansive. It changed all of my relationships with everybody in my family. I mean, I'm a different human being because of it, for sure. Like it absolutely changed my life. So I was doing all of that, and I was busy doing that. And so when I was with Mona doing that work, I wasn't thinking about coaching. I was thinking about doing something that was more alternative. I thought, wow, that would be cool to be able to like sit around and talk to people all day long. Like when I was working 16-hour days at Paramount, like it seems like, wow, that would be really cool. But I didn't think that that was for me. I didn't think that and it's hard when you work with someone that's so gifted. If you at all want to compare yourself with them, you're like, I could never fucking do what she does, ever. So what happened was I started a nonprofit organization. Uh, I went to Africa because of the work I did with Mona. I remembered that I had this vision as a little girl that I wanted to work with African women. And so, and I had actually pursued that through a lot of my younger life, and it just didn't come to fruition. Like I used to tell my mom, I'm not going to college. I'm going to go to Africa. And she's like, yeah, right. Well, I graduated from high school in 1987. There was no internet, so I couldn't for the life of me. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the United States. I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to get to Africa. Like I couldn't figure it out. So I was like, I guess I'll go to college. And then I went to Penn State, and then I started working with, I did some sort of independent study where I was tutoring ESL students. Like I was doing work to prepare my resume to go to the Peace Corps, because I was like, the Peace Corps can take me to Africa for sure. And then I ended up doing a teaching program called Teach for America, and I got sidetracked. And then I moved to LA, and I got into the entertainment business and so on and so forth. And then I forgot. Like I absolutely forgot what I was supposed to do. And though I had gotten super involved in women's empowerment work, I got, I traveled a ton. Whenever I had a holiday, I was traveling somewhere in the developing world. So I was doing these things, and then all of a sudden I woke up to like, oh my lands, I was supposed to go to Africa. I have this thing, like I had this vision. And so in 2005, thanks to the work that I did with Mona, I was able to, I realized what I wanted to do. And I took I had the balls, so to speak. I don't have any balls, but if I had balls, I got them. Maybe I do have some balls. They're energetic balls. So
you definitely do have
balls.
energetic balls.
So funny. I'm like I know, I'm thinking like hermaphrodite or something, but it's energetically.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm constantly working to balance my masculine and my feminine energies.
Yeah.
So anyway, I quit my job at Paramount. It's a long freaking story, which I won't get into. It's pretty fascinating. And went to Africa. And I literally actually did it all on the same day. Like I left my 10-year career and went to Africa on the same day. And when I got like 3 days in, I was in a village in a hut with like 35 women. And I was like, holy shit, this is the vision that I saw as a little girl. And I knew in the moment that's where I was, where 30 years before, like I was there. So that's what this work provided me. It provided me this, like, I had a fucking dream, and I got to connect the dots with the dream. And I feel like, holy shit. I remember one time so anyway, what that did was, and I'm talking too much, just tell me to shut up, but, or pull back the reins. So what happened was I spent 3 months traveling in Africa, and then I went to Europe, and then I came back to the US, and I incorporated a nonprofit organization with the focus of providing clean drinking water as a foundation to development. Because when I met with women over months in Kenya, I realized if they didn't have clean water, there was no conversation about empowerment. And so that, it wasn't as sexy as I thought, like female genital mutilation, that conversation was, but I was like, I guess we're doing water. And I didn't know anything about the water issue at the time. So anyway, cut to, like, I started this organization, and I can tell you about that or not. But what happened was, I was sitting with my dad one day. I'll never forget where I was. It was called, it was on Main Street in Santa Monica. It's not there anymore. It was called World Cafe. It was owned by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Anyway, so I was sitting there, and I was like, Dad, like, how awesome is this? This might be like a year or two into the Samburu Project, which was the organization that I started. I was like, Dad, how cool is this? I'm living my dream. Like, I had a dream, and now I'm living the dream. And by the way, it was hard as that. Living the dream can be really hard. Living the dream is not easy. You just get to have you get to wear the badge of, like, I'm living my dream. Like, this is my vision, and now I'm doing it. Doesn't mean that it's easy. But I was like, how cool is that? And like, we live in this world in the United States where you could do whatever you want. Like, I mean, certain people have certain obstacles that they have to be challenged with. But at the end of the day, like, the world is your oyster if you want to make it happen. I mean, we hear these stories all the time, and I'm like, but the crazy thing is, people are not following their dreams. People are so afraid to even speak into what their dream is. Like, they're not living their dream.
But do you think, because obviously the work with Mona had a massive impact on you, and it sounds like if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have been living yours, or you might not have, or it would have been different.
Oh, maybe. I mean, who knows, right?
So,
it could have been like someone else. It could have, who knows? Or I could have been living mildly miserable for my entire life. That's possible.
and I guess what I'm asking is, what do you think is, I don't know if you've seen this with clients or whether it's just your story or the world at large, what do you think the difference is between, why is it that some people aren't even trying to live their dreams?
I think most people don't even know that it's a possibility. Like,
even in America, despite the American dream.
It's for somebody else. Yeah, it's for someone else. Like, people lack the empowerment to realize how magical and master manifestor they are. Like, we have that. But people they don't know it. They don't believe it. And I think one of the reasons is that we live in a world where it's so external, right? Everything comes from the outside. No, it doesn't. We're socialized to believe that everything's outside in, right? From the way that we're treated in our families to the way that we're treated in schools. But that empowerment piece where it's like, actually we're co-creating with God or the universe or whatever you want, like, all day long. But people don't know that, like, because we live in a world that the way things are structured is that, and our religious systems, like, they don't want people to believe that we're doing that we have that ability. It's like, I mean, this is crazy, but it's what just occurred to me. It's like why the witches were killed in Salem, right? It's like, because we all as human beings, like, no one's more special than any other person. Like, we all have these abilities. But the way that our governments and schools and religions have worked with people, it's to make them not believe, to disbelieve in their abilities. And so if we disbelieve in our abilities, then, that's how you keep the man down, so to speak, or whatever that is. I think that's part of it. I think that's changing drastically. I think we're in a we're in this is the 2000s. It's like there's a shift in consciousness for sure that's happening. But then we see this polarity because you see the two sides, right? It's got to come to like a happy medium somewhere. So I think people just don't even know it because of the way you've been socialized, and it's generational. So it's not just like, oh, you've been socialized this way. It's like you're carrying the DNA of all of your people, right? All of your ancestors. And it's been like this for a really long time, unless you were like the landlord. And then you got the whole thing. And then everyone else was like beneath you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just making this shit up right now, but I think I believe it.
Yeah, no,
I believe that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is a lot to do with that, and I think it happens again and again, right? You can realize what's possible in different levels. I feel like in the last year or two, I've gone to a new level. It's like I kind of knew that I could create some kind of change in my life, but that still doesn't mean that I believe I could do what, let's say, Mona, if my equivalence of Mona could do, because they are them, right? And then at some point you start to shift to, for me, it's more of a shift of, oh wait, but I can just, I'm not going to be Mona, but that's fine, right? I can do something to do with Robbie. It'll be like that, but there's no reason that I have to tell a story that it can't be whatever.
Well, because you, Robbie, have whatever the gift, and Mona was an extraordinarily gifted human for sure, but we all have those extraordinary gifts. We all have. Yeah. And I can't, as Mona's student, I can't hold myself up to her and say like, God, I just can't. I mean, I can hold it to like well, what would Mona do in this situation? Because sometimes we need that. And then it's like, and maybe it's funny because we're having this conversation. I love this because like, I think I've been thinking about this for a while, about Mona and how fearless she was. And it's like, how do I get to be more fearless? How can I be more fearless in my coaching? She was really great because she was fucking fearless. And that's a goal for me for sure.
Yeah,
I'm never going to be like her. I'm different. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Forget about Jesus. What would Mona do?
Exactly.
By the way, she's like giggling right now that we're even having a fucking conversation.
Yeah, and I think Jesus would be cool with that as well. I mean, he was probably a good
Jesus
coach,
would be totally cool with that.
But I think he would understand. Mm-hmm. But so, Kristen, then so you started Samburu Project, which, I mean, tens of thousands of people got clean water. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, to date, it's over 100,000 people.
Wow.
Because I left the organization in 2016, but the organization has continued without me. Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
What a thing. What a legacy. You don't have to do anything else. You've already.
I would say, like, I'm the founder. I don't have to do anything, and I'm still the founder. When I realized that, when I was like fixing it, but I was like updating my LinkedIn, I'm like, what do I put here? Like, I have founder, because I was founder and executive director for a long time, and it was on one line. And then I was no longer the executive director, so that got pushed down. But I'm like, I'm the founder in perpetuity. Yeah. Like, I'm always the founder of the organization. So I get on some level to take, and I don't mean that in an egoic way. It's just it tickles me kind of, because it's like, it doesn't matter. I'm the founder of this organization. It would not exist without me. Like, how cool is that?
Nothing's ever going to change that.
No, it's on my LinkedIn, like to present.
Yeah. Nice.
Still the founder.
So
I don't really have anything to do with the organization anymore, which is great too as a founder.
Yeah. Why? What happened? Why did you draw that chapter to a close?
So it's interesting because today a memory came up in Facebook for me, which is related to this. In that, in 2015, in May, my father died. But just before he died, about a few weeks before he died, I had gone to visit him, and I knew he had just gotten a diagnosis, a stage 4 lung cancer diagnosis, and there's nothing we could do. And he had a very short time to live. And so I spent a few days with him, and it occurred to me that he didn't get to do anything else in his life. Like, that was it. Like he was done. I mean, he got to do whatever he was going to do before he died, but any big, huge dreams that he had or hopes or whatever, like, for this lifetime, it was over. Like, he was going to be complete. And I was like, holy shit. Like, Samburu Project was absolutely a dream of mine, but I'm complete. Like, I'm done with this, but I have other things I want to pursue. Like, I had other visions and other dreams. Like, for as many challenges as we have purposes. And so I was like, because I kind of thought in my head, like, oh, I have to do this for the rest of my life, because I like am the lucky one that found, like, I'm doing what I said that I was going to do. But my truth is, probably about year 7, I was kind of like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I was like, I was through almost 3 or 2+ years in to like, it's fundraising's hard. Like, it's relentless. It's, logistics in Africa, challenging. I had a young child as a single mom, like this whole time almost. My son was born in 2008. I had started the organization in 2005. So, a lot of this time of the growth of the organization, I was like single parenting. And I was like, God, like this, it just felt like I was pushing a boulder up the hill all the time. And I was like, how much can one human take? And there was a lot of amazingness to it too, right? That like we did what I said. I set out to do something and I did it. I mean, the initial goal of the Samburu Project was to drill 25 wells, period. And then I was going to like quit and go back to the entertainment business or something. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I thought maybe. And we totally surpassed that. By the way, it took us like 4 years longer to get to our initial 3 years, something, forever, to get to the initial goal that I thought it was going to. Because it all cost a lot more money than I thought it was supposed to based on my initial research. So, but anyway, so back to it was my dad dying that was like, wow, like his dying gave me permission to step away. It was actually the biggest gift in his dying. It actually had a memory that came up today on Facebook that I was saying. There was a picture of my father and my son when my son was about 1.5 years old, and myself. And it was a picture, and we were in Ohio. I was doing fundraising, and there was a picture with the fall leaves, and it's so beautiful. And I had put it up like 4 years ago on the 6-month anniversary of his death, and it came up today. And I'll tell you something. Ooh, did I get a good cry on that one today? Still, my heart is still like broken over losing my father. But what I got in his death was like unbelievable. I say now that he's my business partner because I always go to him for any business decisions. Like when I did the Rich Litvin salon and spent all that money, I was like, Dad, give me a sign. And literally, I said I want it by noon today. And it was like 6 a.m. and I had it by like 10:45.
What was the sign?
I was in a spinning class, and like the instructor started like channeling my father. Like he was talking just like my father, and there's a lot of fucks in his language. And then I was like, oh my God, it's my dad talking. I could tell it was him. And it was kind of like, fuck it, why not? Like it was, and I was like, oh my lands, it's really this. And I was in my head. And then I was like, okay, I got that, but I need one more thing. Like you have to confirm that that's a confirmation. And then the guy started talking about the 405. And my dad was like crazy about cars and the freeways. And I'd had another 405 experience prior to that with my dad after he passed, which is another long story. But I was like, oh my God, that's it. Like he gave me the sign. I got 2 signs within like 2 signs. So anyway, my dad's my business partner. He gave me the permission. And I told my father before he died. So I was flying back home, and it kind of all came together for me. I was like, holy shit, I have to leave Samburu Project. Like I don't have a plan, but I got to do it. Because like this chapter's closing for me. And so I called my dad. It was my first phone call. I got back to LA and I called him and I was like, Dad, I want you to know. And he was still lucid. Like I could have this conversation with him. I was like, I'm leaving the Samburu Project. And he was like my dad was very thoughtful. He always took long pauses. Took a really long pause. He's like, Kristen, I am so proud of you. You have done the impossible. And I was like, still crying about it.
Yeah.
And it's all true. And the crazy fucking thing, Robbie, is that he was my biggest fucking naysayer. He is like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, are you serious? Why would you do this? Why would you start a nonprofit organization? This is the craziest thing in the world. And then it's like, I had that conversation. So what do you need? What do you need? So I then gave my notice, and that was immediately I gave my notice. And then I went back. We had an event. That's why I came back to LA when he was dying. And we had a walk for water. I gave my notice. I met with after the walk, I met my board chair. I gave my notice. I gave like a long time, like 8 months or something. And then I went back to Florida where my dad was. And I spent the last 2 weeks with him before he passed. And another story for another day, but I got to cross over with them, which is pretty extraordinary. So anyway, so that's then when he asked me a question.
Yeah.
Because I got more, I can talk all day, Robbie.
It's great, Kristen. It's so great. It's so great. But thank you. Let's slow, now that we've broken it, let's slow it down and just say, thanks for sharing those stories already. They're powerful stories. And
welcome.
What a I've remembered that as you was talking about your dad. I remembered that thing that you told me before about him being the business partner, and I have thought about that since you first said it, because it's such a beautiful way to think about things. The way that, you know, so many people in different ways, not usually as big as our parents are, but have been partners for me in what I've created. And what a beautiful thing that was one of the gifts that you got.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. So you were then free, no longer under the pressure of Samburu Project and fundraising.
Well, I mean, I still had to unwind from that. It was not as easy as that, Robbie. So yeah, but anyway, I ended up staying at the organization until the end of February, Leap Day, 2016. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So that's gonna be 4 years this February. And what's interesting about it is that it was a really horrible transition. You often hear about how leadership transitions are not, they get ugly, and it did. It got really ugly.
Yeah, especially with founders, right?
Yeah, it was ugly. I mean, I was ready to. I resigned. You know, it was on my own reconnaissance. I chose to leave, and then it just got super weird. Like the way that the new leadership came in, and it was just weird. The whole thing was really, ugh. And like the focus was on things that it should not have been on, in my opinion. And it was so stressful. So it was really pretty awful. It was for me because it was my baby, and I was like, and you know, I was like, how is this happening? Like, this is such a beautiful thing. Why is it going sideways like this? And it's like, you know, thank God for like hindsight, right? Because I was like, oh, this is what happens. And that's after I cried a lot and felt like I was being ganged up on and like all kinds of crazy shit. But the thing that's beautiful about it is I can always tell people, I'm like, okay, I've been through all of it. So not only did I start the organization, I went through a horrible leadership transition. I know what that's like. I've been through that and I survived it. Thank God.
And what did you do next? Like,
So this is what happened. And that was, I mean, I'm telling you, the way the transition happened was so awful. On top of like, I had already had a pretty challenging year before that with my dad dying. And I had gone through a major custody situation with my son's father. And so that was like a 3.5 year thing. Like I was burnt out. Oh, and then Mona had died too. In 2011, Mona died. And that was right when my custody situation happened with my son's father, which was a 3.5 year, you know, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical challenge. Right. And then my dad dying. So there's just a lot. It was like a really challenging 5 years. And so I made the decision when I was leaving Samburu, especially after like it just got so weird at the end. It was just so stressful. I was like, I'm not going to make a decision about anything for 90 days, which didn't make sense for my bank account at all, because I actually had no money because I had spent all of my personal savings starting the organization 10 years before. I didn't take a salary for 3 years, and then I had a child and I was a single parent. And so, you know, I didn't have any money in the bank. So it wasn't like I was telling everybody this. I was just like, okay, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I know that there's no possible way that I can make a good decision for myself right now. Like I'm not in any place to make a decision for myself. Like I'm in a place where I needed to give myself time and space. And so I took 90 days. I had started doing a little bit of consulting work, like most of it not paid, with for friends that were starting companies, women. And I really was enjoying that, like helping women with their businesses. But I was just focusing on me. I got like, I don't know if they have this in London, but I got ClassPass. I think they do actually. Do you know ClassPass?
No.
Like a way you can go to like all the studios and like go to their classes
Yeah,
like one fee. So I did like ClassPass. I was taking, I was going all over, mostly Santa Monica, all over, like doing different classes and going to yoga and, taking naps during the day and meeting up with friends and spending more time with my son and that kind of thing. And like my son and I at that time went to Disneyland. And so it really took 3 months. But interestingly, at some point during that 3 months, I had been thinking that I was into this working with women business owners, right? Entrepreneurs. And then sometime, and I had thought about doing like working with family foundations on like mission, vision, strategy kind of stuff. Because there's all these family foundations that gave all this money away, but most of them didn't have any like real focus. But I wasn't sure about that. I was kind of like tossing things around. And then I got an email one day from a woman who was also a client of Mona's. And she had worked at Paramount with me. And I actually introduced her to Mona. And she was a bit younger than me. And she had actually written a book when she was like 25 called The Quarter Life Crisis. She shall remain nameless. But what was interesting is I'd often get her emails and get triggered. Like I'd get kind of triggered. Like I'd feel edgy. I'd be like, ugh, And I got the email one day and I'm like, why am I so like triggered by her emails? And I was like, holy shit. It's because I want to do what she's doing. Like I want to become a coach. I want to be having these conversations. Right? I mean, jealousy and envy or whatever. It's just an indication, right? Of like something that you want. So it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Like, by the way, I still need to thank her for that. She moved out of town, so I haven't seen her. But that was a pivotal moment. And I was like, oh my lands, I want to do this work. That's the work I want to do. I want to do the work, the Mona work, what I've learned from her. And so I started researching. I decided that even though I had done the work with Mona, I decided that it was important for me to, like, I wanted to have a certification. Like that was just, I wanted to have that. Like,
yeah. What was important about that for you? And I guess in that question is the question, when do you think it's important for coaches to have certifications and to do that kind of
I
thing?
just wanted it for like the framework, I think. I wanted it, Mona was kind of right brain loosey-goosey. And I was like, well, so I had a lot of information from her. I could have just started coaching. I was like, no, I want to see how other people do it, see what this is about. So I started researching it, and there's like 8,000 places you can go and get a coach certification.
Especially in California, right?
Yeah, a lot. So I was like, well, what to do? And then I was looking at like 3. IPEC, which is where I ended up doing my training. They have that in England as well. Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And then there was like, what's the other one called? Coach U. And then there was one more. I forget what it's called. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's so not meaningful to me. But I'm glad that I did it. And so the interesting thing is, without really knowing it, I only declared the 90 days. On literally like the 90th day, I called. I mean, I had already been talking to IPEC, but I called and like gave them my money and like signed up for a program that was starting in July, like with their modules, like their in-person meetings. But it was I was doing like an advanced study, so I could do my advanced coursework beforehand, like immediately. So literally on the 90th day, I made a decision. I signed up for coaching school without actually knowing that it was the 90th day until I got back on. And so I started doing the IPEC work, and it was like a year program, intensive, a lot of work, but it gave me the balls. See, I got balls again to like start soliciting coaching clients. The first module was like the beginning of July, and I almost immediately started soliciting clients. And I felt like I could do that because I was in coaching school for whatever reason. It was good. It was a worthwhile $10,000 investment.
Yeah. And so then fast forward us, like I for some reason my intuition is fast forward us to now, and then let's fill in the gaps. So we're now, that's 2016, is it still? Like July, August 2016?
Yeah.
So we're like...
So it started July 2016, and I finished up somewhere in the next spring in 2017. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're now a couple of years on from that. And how is your
Like a
work?
lifetime.
Yeah, right. I can't believe, I mean,
It
also,
feels
I
so
can't believe...
long ago. I feel like I've been coaching forever.
Yeah.
In a good way.
What does it feel like now? What does it look like? How is work and how is coaching?
It's only as good as the day where you get a new client.
Right.
Thought I had a new client yesterday. We'll see. It's good. It's interesting. The year that we worked with Rich, or whatever that was, it seemed like it was a year. It wasn't quite a year. It's about 9 months or something.
Yeah. So that was, so we were on a Prosperous Coach Salon. I think it was from like October 17 until May or something like that.
June, I think, went to June. It kind of got extended a bit.
Yeah. So that was pretty early, right? So you made the 10, you talked a little bit about getting the signs for the investment, but that's another big investment in terms of money that you'd made in yourself and your business within the first kind of 2 or 3 years. So how does it, within the first 2 years, really. So how, like, holding that.
Which was October 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the same year that I was just finishing up IPEC.
Yeah. So I'm really curious about that, because I think that one of the things that coaches sometimes find difficult is making investments in themselves. It's been a common theme already. This is only the sort of 6th or 7th of these that I've done, and pretty much everyone who I've asked, what's on the podcast, what one bit of advice is most important. Pretty much everyone within, maybe not in the first one, but in the first 2 or 3 has said, hire a coach, learn from other people, develop yourself, and use that to support you. And I think for some people, making that investment, even just even a smaller amount of money is really hard. And something about you meant that you were up for making 2 5-figure investments within the first 18 months of deciding to become a coach.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely a student in so many ways.
Yeah.
So I didn't think I couldn't. I was looking actually that year, and I know you're going to talk about it now, but for some reason we're back to talking about then. So here we go. In 2017, after I finished my coaching work, somehow I had happened hearing about the Prosperous Coach book. And then my son had gone away for a couple of weeks with his godmother. And so I had like a little time and space for myself. And I'm like, I'm going to delve into that and actually listen to it, and listen to the audio within like 24 hours. I listened to the whole book. And I was like, wow. And then I started stalking Rich on the internet and like watching his coaching. And I was like, wow, this is the closest thing in terms of the depth that I've seen since the work I did with Mona. Like, he's so goes deep. And I was like, I got to have this guy as my coach. I was actually looking for a coach, not necessarily for my business, but personal. I didn't realize he was like $100,000 a year for one-to-one. I got a much better deal with Mona. She increased her prices, by the way. Like, it went from the 12 years that I worked with her, she went from $100 an hour to $150.
I love the different, by
the way, outraged. I was outraged about it. Outraged. I was so angry about that. I was so mad that she raised her prices. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
But I love the difference and how people just, like, the weird thing is somehow there's something in the coaching industry that the people who charge really big fees are more well known. Like, one of the other guests that I interviewed, she's been coaching for 18 years or something. So one of the longest coaching people in the UK, and it's done like 14,000 hours of one-to-one. And she did the kind of thing that Mona did, right? She just coaches people all the time. She doesn't need any gaps between sessions, none of that stuff. And she doesn't really charge that much. And it's really interesting.
What's
that different
number?
people are.
She good?
She goes £100 an hour. So somewhere between Mona's 2 prices.
Gosh. Wow.
At least she does for some people. I think we talked about it in the thing. It's like there's a slightly higher price for corporate stuff, and there's a slightly higher price in a couple of situations, but most of the time it's £100 an hour, which is great value. And I recommend people, Katie Harvey, I recommend people check out that episode and listen, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I can definitely afford this coach. Maybe they'll think.
Yeah.
But she's got, carefully thought out reasons for why that's the point she's at.
And you have to do what resonates with you, what works for you, right?
Yeah. But so you read the
so
book.
anyway, I read the book, and then I reached out to Rich. I sent him an email. I didn't know that he had this big, machine behind him. I thought I was just going to get rich. I was like, hey, told him a bit about myself, and then I got like a generic thing back. And in a way, I guess when I sent the email, I knew that he was expensive, I think, actually. But I thought it was $75,000, and I was like, I don't have that, but I'll figure out a way to get it to work with somebody like this. And then when I got like a generic email back, and it was like, oh, there's a salon, or a salon, as you all say. And I was like, oh, and it was only like, I don't remember what it was, but it was like $13,000 or $15,000 or something. And I was like, well, that's a whole lot less than $75,000.
Suddenly it's a bargain.
It was a bargain.
Yeah.
But then it was like, that was not even a hard decision.
Yeah.
No, actually, that's the decision I asked my dad to help me with.
Huh.
So anytime you're spending something over $10,000, you're like, especially when we don't really have any money. I mean, at the time I had started coaching, and I was making money as a coach, right? But I was not charging very much money comparatively.
Yeah.
So anyway, the investments are, and then I had an amazing, made my money back. And the time that I worked with Rich, I got my first, $10,000 client. I got my, I got a bunch of clients for some good money. So
it's worth it, right? I that's the thing that I think is, if you're a coach and you're working with your coach and you're not making that back, something's going wrong, right? But
it's a bad investment,
right? But most of the time, if you're careful with that investment, in the long term, it's bound to pay back. And that was the same for me with thinking about joining that salon. It's like, there's no way that over the next 5 years, I'm not going to get, so for me, I was thinking in pounds, so I'm going to get 10,000 pounds then, because it's probably pound is a bit stronger. There's no way I'm not going to make an extra 10,000 pounds after working with Rich and having 6 months of this.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, and then now we're another 18 months on from the end of that. How does your business look? I've been on your website, so I know that you've got you do a variety of different things, and presumably there's still one-on-one work, and it looks like there's some group work. So how is your practice structured now?
Well, Rich actually I don't know if you remember this call, but Rich was the one that convinced me to do my first group, like immediately.
Yeah.
Do you remember that call?
No, not specifically.
I want to do a coaching group. And he's like, well, start it today. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it's so funny because before that, I'd actually paid for another program that was a much less expensive investment with somebody who was like, trying to teach you how to put together a group coaching program. And she was I'm a right brainer, so I need left brainers to deal with. Like, I can't, it has to be structured because I need help with that. And it was like, I didn't do shit the whole time. I did this, class. And I think that one might have lasted for 6 months. I did that while I had already started when I was in the middle of IPEC still. And I was like, oh God, I'm never going to get a group coaching program off the ground. And Rich was like, just start today. Who's like the ideal person for your thing? And I had a client who was sort of winding out of one-to-one sessions. And I was like, Betsy. And he was like, great. Call Betsy up and see if she'll be in your group and tell her that she gets, and I even actually let her pay her, choose her fee. And I was like, well, what do you want to pay for it? It's me, 12 weeks and, 12, whatever. And so she decided what she was going to pay. And she was my first member. And then I ended up getting 6 people in my group.
Yeah, really fast. I remember that bit. I remember being
it was like this.
Oh no, Kristen's just filled a group by stepping up.
I did.
And so, but that, I think that distinction or that difference between that thing that people think they have to do to start a group, let's say to start a group program, and what you actually have to do to start a group program. That's one of the things I definitely learned from Rich. It's just like, if you've got an idea, just do it right now. But that's easier said than done. In this case with this group of 6 people, because I think people are interested in that. How do you create a group? So you just called Betsy and she named her price.
Like, I remember where I was sitting. I was sitting outside on my stoop in the front of my building, and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And she's like, oh yeah, I'd be interested in doing that. And then She named a price. I think maybe she got back to me and told me. I was like, perfect.
Did she name, I like the name a price thing. I think it's a really interesting
Yeah, it's
psychological
fun.
experiment. Did she name, like, when you think back now, was it like more than you're expecting or less or about right? Or I guess
She
she
paid a
knew.
little. She paid less than what everybody else was paying,
Yeah.
and I wasn't a high fee. I think people were paying $250 a month for the group.
Right. For how many
So
calls
the
roughly?
group
Like,
was $750 for 12 sessions.
yeah.
So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't what I'm charging now for groups. So, you know, I think the more you, I don't know. I think sometimes the more you charge, then that it becomes a bigger consideration for people, right? So it's like, do you want people in your group or do you want to charge your fee?
Yeah. And with that in mind, how have your fees generally evolved over time?
Well, so for the group, so I do groups now. It's different. I was doing a group, which maybe I'll resurrect at some point. I really liked it. It was called Truly Fearless Leaders. It was a women entrepreneur group, and it was called the Monday Morning Meeting. So it was like the board meeting, your board meeting.
Oh,
Right?
that's cool.
I loved it. Don't steal my idea. No, I'm just kidding. You can take it. You can have it. I loved it actually, and I don't know why I didn't do another one immediately. It can be stressful to enroll for groups because like Rich had this great idea, like you have Betsy and then like you just bring people on, and it did work, but sometimes it's like the timing and then what time do you do it and is everybody, there's so many factors you're trying to get people in on. It can be a little challenging. So now I do groups. And I'm actually enrolling for a group right now for Invisible Warfare. So basically what I do now in my groups is I teach a book called Invisible Warfare, which is a book that Mona wrote before she died. She actually wrote it in 2006, so she wrote it 5 years before she died. But basically, her work is written in a book, and it's pretty extraordinary. And I'm wowed because I reread it every time I teach the group, and I'm like, it's genius. So get the book, Invisible Warfare, if you're interested in emotional processing work, because it's incredible. It's really extraordinary. She self-published it. So I take people through a 6-month journey in that book. So we meet 3 times a month for 18 sessions.
Why 3 times a month?
I like having one because then it's like you always have 1 week off. It gives people time to sort of simmer or not, and it gives me time to simmer. And from a calendaring perspective, I do all my clients 3 times a month, except for a couple clients that I've had since the beginning, in the first year of my coaching, and then those clients I talk to once a week.
And why not less often?
I don't know. It just feels good. 3 times a month feels good to me.
Yeah.
I know some coaches that do twice a month. I think sometimes you lose your focus, like you forget, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I can't believe 2 weeks have passed. And it's like, well, where were we? And there's like a lot of catching up to do. And I kind of keeps you on top of it. Like, especially I like to work with people for 6 months. That's kind of my sweet spot. And like now almost always when I propose to people, even for one-to-one, I propose 6 months work.
Why do you
It
think
feels like
it's the
long
sweet
enough
spot?
to make something happen. I think a year-long coaching relationship is a long time. And so I like this idea of like renewing the relationship if you so choose. And I think that in 6 months you can get an idea of like either something has happened or you see where you're going, where you've really had some transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it sounds like it's evolved at least a little bit over time. You know, so you said the older clients that have been around a longer time and you see weekly. What was your experience like of learning that 6 months, 3 times a week is the sweet spot? How did that happen?
3 times a month, a week.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, 3 times a week would be extreme. I don't know any coaches who do that, actually. I know coaches who do lots of different things. I don't know anyone who meets several times a week, I don't think.
I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a therapist, and he's just finishing his hours, and he meets some people 3 times a week.
Well, I mean, the traditional psychoanalyst thing, right, is you meet 5 times a week. It's extreme. But you don't do that. But yeah, what's been the evolution of how you work with people, and what have you found works and doesn't work?
Well, I used to do this thing, right, where even in the proposal, like I give them options and whatever, and kind of stopped doing that. Like when it's like 6 months, this is what it's going to look like.
And why? What's different about that? What do you like about it?
Because I don't want to make a commitment for longer than that.
And you don't want to, and shorter is like not enough.
I mean, maybe if there was somebody that was like, wow, like you want to do something extraordinary and it's going to take you at least a year to do it, I could see where I would take that job. I mean, even I've just taken on a consulting client where I'm really it'll be coaching, but it's going to be a lot of like looking at the books kind of stuff. And I made that a 6-month trial because I was like, the year just feels really long to me.
Yeah.
Like you can make amazing shit happen in 6 months. And if it's awesome, you can renew it. What do you do? I mean, do you like, what do you do going towards?
What do I do? Yeah, I mean, similar. I do offer 12 months sometimes when it feels like the right thing to do. I have a similar feeling about less than 6 months. I just noticed, I used to do 4 months a lot, and I just noticed that those people, it didn't always stick as much as I wanted it to be. And I, with a couple of them in particular that I really loved, it felt like it hadn't stuck for them. And I was sad about that. And then I realized, I also thought, they only chose 4 months because I gave them the chance to choose it. If I'd said 6, or even if I'd said 12 with those two particularly, they would have bought the 12. And then their life would have been better and we would have had more fun and it would have been great. So I stopped doing less than 6 because of that. But you're right, the 12 is a big commitment and you got to realize that. It's like, well, I don't necessarily want to be committing to speaking to you, person. I don't know yet if I want to speak to you, 3 times a month or whatever it is that it ends up being on average for 12 months. Like, you got to feel it and you got to know it. But I think there's something powerful in the way, we're both talking about that, which is, what do you think is best for you and for the clients? And 6 months is a great amount of time. You can do a lot in 6 months, and it's perfect for.
I think the 4 months never just. Now, interestingly, I had something come up this summer where people were like wanted to do one-off sessions with me.
What did you say?
Well, ultimately, I haven't done it. But then in fact, Marty, who turned around to Mona, she was asking me about that. And she's like, why would you do that? Like, just to serve people when they want to have that, I'm like, I don't know. And so I've been kind of toying with that idea. Like, should I start offering that to some people who want just to have a session?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Because I think you can have something extraordinary happen in one conversation.
Are these people who you've worked with before or well, or they're people who are just coming out?
Or I've done a lot of create with that never turned out to be clients.
Yeah.
If you could say you charge $500 for a one-off session, you do a few of those a month.
Yeah. What I've found with that stuff is I usually name a fee, which I'm like, yeah, definitely, this would be really exciting and worth it, and it would, all that kind of thing. And people usually at that point say, no thanks. They haven't quite done the sums that make, I don't know, that make sense. But I also sometimes just give people the conversations. If it's just one conversation, it's somebody I'd like to do that with.
Well, and then what I was finding is they were sending me flowers, and I love flowers, but really what I want is money. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I do love flowers, and I so was grateful for that, but I'm like, my truth was I would have rather had $500.
Send me some money.
You know what I mean? I mean, I need to make money to support my lifestyle.
Yeah. And
keep traveling around the world.
And so, Kristen, well, but that's a great point, right? We need to make money. We absolutely do. And I guess what I'm curious about is either at the start or now, how does your business tick over? Where do the people come from?
It's been an interesting year for me because actually this year was down from last year. And so it's kind of
massively down, or just like,
I turned my focus because I started doing the invisible warfare work in December of last year. So I think I was putting a lot of energy into filling groups. You make a lot less money doing groups, but it takes as much energy to get each person, in my experience. it's not any easier to get somebody for 2,500 for a group than for 7,500 for a one-to-one. It's the same amount of energy.
Right.
Now, the question is, would that person that did the group not do a one-to-one engagement for $7,500? We don't know. Or maybe sometimes I offer the group because they don't want to pay the one-to-one, right?
Right.
Like, it's kind of like that, well, you could do this then, like, and save yourself 65% of the money or whatever. So, I mean, I think it's interesting. So many of my clients were, I mean, they were all people that I knew or like word of mouth.
Yeah.
People that I knew who they knew. I have to think now. It was all people that I knew. It was like, I coach people that I know too. Because I know a lot of people. And they want me to coach them. And as people don't do that, like they wouldn't coach a friend, so to speak. I coach my friends that want coaching.
As paying clients?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, if I have a service to provide for them and they want me, why would I not? I know some people don't do that. I do it.
But what's been your experience of it? Of working with friends?
Great.
Yeah. It can be wonderful, can't it? Like I'm not sure that I haven't had many paying clients that for a while that were people that I genuinely felt like friends. But when I did, it was great. And I've done one-off conversations here and there, and it's wonderful. You drop into a new place in the relationship with them, the friendship. Also, the coaching can go to really interesting places because of the existing relationship.
So, so I still have, I mean, some of my oldest clients are people that were like are my friends that I've known for 30 years or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're still my client. They still want to work with me. They still want to do a call once a week or whatever. So anyway, I have recently started, in fact, I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I thought that I had converted a client yesterday who was a client that I had gotten on LinkedIn. I know that you do a lot of writing on LinkedIn. Do you do LinkedIn Pro Finder?
No, I just use it as a writing platform, really, and a what do you call it, like a business card holder. I haven't used it for anything else.
Well, because you have so much on LinkedIn, it might be an interesting thing to pursue if you're looking for clients. Because I've gotten a couple of clients from LinkedIn. I mean, essentially it pays for the service because I think it's $79 a month.
And what does it do?
You get leads.
Right.
So people who are looking for coaches, right? They're asking for proposals, and you send proposals. And it's a lot of. I'm doing a cut and paste pretty much for the most part, a little bit like modifying it. In fact, I have another call this afternoon, but I've had a number this last couple of weeks. I've had a few calls, and one was a yes yesterday. Now I gotta, this is a weird coaching thing, right? I woke up this morning. And I was like, I want you to think about it. We'll get back. And she's like, no, I know I want to do this. Like, I know I want to do it. I'm like, okay. So I said, why don't you, talk to your husband and whatever. And then of course she came back on an email or message this morning and said, her husband wants to quit his job. And so now it's going to change the financial conversation. So we'll see what happens. But if that one happened, LinkedIn will be like a financial windfall for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it's a good way to think, isn't it? How long you can run that at $79 a month if one-on-one client or a group client is $2,500, right?
Forever.
Exactly.
Forever.
You only need to get one, and it pays for
forever.
the next 5 years.
If you get a couple
10 years.
a year, it's forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think I've worked it out where I've figured out, because at first I think my proposals weren't good.
Yeah.
I didn't realize what I had to say. And then I wrote actually a proposal for another client for this company that I'm working with. And I was like, oh, I like that proposal. I'm going to use that on my LinkedIn proposal. Like I'm going to use like a similar structure. And it's really worked because a lot of people have been saying, yeah, I want to have a conversation with you.
Wow, how interesting. So like online advertising basically works.
Material like on LinkedIn, you'd actually probably be more interesting because there's more to find out about you in that space.
Yeah.
I don't have anything on LinkedIn.
I like it.
So that might be, because you think about like like this company that I'm working for, I was just meeting with a bookkeeper last week, and they're spending all this, they're selling a product. And, they're spending all this money on Facebook. And I was like, what are they doing on Facebook? And where is that money? Like, what's the outcome? We have to be able to tell that story when we look at the books, so to speak. Not that I really have complicated books, but if I'm investing any money, I have to look to see the flow of the money, like what's coming back to me based on that investment, right? And if I'm not getting anything back based on that investment, then I have to stop investing.
Right.
Wasted money. And I think coaches, and whether that's time or money, right? So people spend a ton of time like on Instagram or whatever, they're trying to find people that way, or Facebook and Facebook Lives, and they're trying to find people that way. Like I found a client this year. I might have gotten other clients, but I got a client directly because she saw a Facebook Live and she direct messaged me and she was like, I have to work with you.
Oh, amazing. And I guess maybe that's a nice place to go now. This kind of thing of this whole place of, I'm sure it does happen, of how do you suggest that coaches who want to grow a business and create clients go about that if people ask it, or what advice would you give?
I'm still trying to figure it out, Robbie.
Yeah.
I think it's always changing. I think you have to do a lot of different things. I think you have to be out in the world connecting with people. Period. Like, because you never know where your clients are coming from. And you have to be willing to speak into the world what you're doing on some level. Like you can't be quiet and expect people to come to you for your services. So somehow you have to let people know what you're doing. But then at the same time, you have to really just connect for connection's sake. Like you cannot connect with an agenda. Because every time I try to connect with an agenda, it fucks me up. Like, just don't do that.
So
sometimes when I'm feeling a little desperate, like, oh, I really need a client, my connections start becoming a little unwieldy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Like make that distinction more real for people about. So if you're connecting just for connecting, you specifically, what are you doing? What's an example?
Having deep conversations with people, like asking them about their lives, asking them curious questions.
Just wherever you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just that.
And then also like, spending time every week really just saying, hey, let's have coffee, let's have lunch.
Yeah.
And then just showing up as a powerful human, and people are like, I want what she's got.
Right. So that's a really important thing, right?
I've been getting a lot of that. Like I've been getting a lot of like, I like what you have.
Yeah. And is that so? Because then the interesting thing, I think, for people, if you read The Prosperous Coach or whatever, or someone hears you saying, just connect, or only connect is that first bit. Then the interesting bit is, how does that then become? Is it obvious, or is it entirely unobvious? Are there any patterns about how that then becomes someone who's a client?
It's every instance is different.
Yeah.
At least since I don't know. I mean, I have some people like to say that like, oh, they figured it out. Or I remember I was talking to somebody recently, and they were like, I've never had a no ultimately when I got to this place. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I almost don't believe it.
Yeah.
And if that's true, like, good for you. But I don't know. Like, I just don't know.
It feels like I have a same, like that good for you tone of voice that you had there. I have that same feeling sometimes. It's like, okay, it feels like if that's true, something must be wrong here. And I don't know what it is, but like, it can't be right.
Missing something?
Yeah.
But I get so many fucking no's, Robbie. You have no idea. Like, I am, in fact, I was processing all morning, doing my writing, like, fuck.
Yeah, but actually, let's
good. I'm like getting the nose, and I'm like, fuck.
It doesn't
like
feel
I'm
good.
fucking not good. That's why in my writing today, I'll share my scribble.
So wait, Kristen, just before you share it, what's your writing practice in a time like this? So you've got the nose, you're feeling like, fuck, what do I do? What do you write? Do you just write, or like, because I think a lot of people, like not just coaches, try and deal with this kind of thing, and it's really hard.
Well, I practice, and I was going to say preach. I practice, preach, and teach emotional processing.
Right. So that's the
So
place where
I'm
you
doing
send
emotional
people.
processing work, and I do sort of a hybrid of, I do a hybrid of The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron's work, which is at the morning pages. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then but in my morning pages, it's like, fuck you! Or like, I'm scared because, I'm sad because, I'm angry because, I'm frustrated because, blah, 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 blah. This, this is like, it makes me feel, it reminds me of, it creates, I do all my writing prompts. I do my writing, my processing in my morning pages.
Yeah.
And then I might start crying, or I might have to take a bat and a pillow out and start hitting it. Today I didn't do that, but I cried because then somehow I got sidetracked and I went to the picture on Facebook of my dad, and then I cried. I had a really good cry this morning. So the goal is tears, usually, because what sits beneath our anger is our sadness, or what sits below our frustration is our sadness. And when we allow ourselves to have that emotional experience of crying, and then like all of a sudden we become lighter and more intuitive and more connected to the planet, ourselves, and all that stuff. So anyway, I wrote, and then like what I came up with was my big thing was this, like, what is it? So what I was doing my writing, what came up was like, this feels like rejection. Like I kind of got two potential rejection things this morning, but that could fucking trigger me where it could take me down a really dark path, like really dark. So I knew I had to go after rejection. I still do. I feel it. I need to take the bat and the pillow out today, and I need to hit it and fucking go after rejection. Because I have such a history of rejection and a story about rejection that like I had a 4-year, like maybe 8, maybe 12, I don't know, like run of rejection that was so intense as a young person that like everything I tried to do, I failed at everything. And so I still, like, I have to keep going back there because that teenage girl is like, I've done so much work on her and she's still fucking upset about it. And so suddenly I'm fucking 14 when I get a potential email that's like, this might not work out. And so how do I fuck things up if I don't process it? Because the rejection has so much energy around it for me. Am I helping you on this?
It's great. It's really great. And I think
So
lots of people
you have to process it. You got to process it. Tell them to call me. I'll tell you how to process it. I'm always processing it. It's not like, oh yeah, it never happens to me. Okay. No, I get fucking rejected all the time. My challenge is like, what is my relationship with rejection? How am I going to what am I going to do about it?
Yeah. And I think loads of people will recognize loads of parts of that. And it's a great story. And maybe it's a nice place, actually. I know there's, other things that you need to be doing today. So maybe that's a nice place for us to start to draw this conversation to a close. It just feels like such a truth that, anyone's business and rejection, for some of us, that's really hard. And so, yeah, like, I think that's a beautiful place to kind of begin to draw the conversation to a close. Before we do, I'm just curious, you mentioned a couple of things that you're working on at the moment. What's coming up for you? How do you think about the next phase of your business and your work?
Wow, there's just so many pieces of it, but I want to continue the work that I'm doing around invisible warfare, the book, the emotional processing work, because I think that it's really at the foundation. It's the root of everything. Like, we could talk about your business. We can talk about your love life. We can talk about your social life. We can, whatever, your hobbies or whatever it is that you're into doing. But if you're fucked up on the emotional front, and you have to learn how to do the processing work. So I feel like it's part of my job on this planet is to teach people how to process emotions. Because I feel like it's what everybody needs, but no one's really talking about.
Yeah.
So it's continuing. I'm going to start another group in December. I'm actually doing a part 2 of two groups that ended already. There's a group of people that want to do continue the work.
That's really cool. And a sign that you're doing really important work with them.
Yeah. And then I've had a client who's gone through invisible warfare that wants to develop an app with me that's around the emotional processing work.
Oh, wow.
And that's really exciting. That's kind of that's the newest thing. And I don't even know what that's going to look like yet, but I had declared a couple of weeks ago that I wanted to do a course around invisible warfare. Probably not called that, something else, like more of what Kristen's take on invisible warfare is. I really see invisible warfare as part of my body of work that I work from, like from that perspective. Somewhat like my inspiration is like Marianne Williamson and the work she did around A Course of Miracles. This is kind of like what I see, that it's my Course of Miracles, because it's really my personal path, my personal foundation. It's the work that I do every day. So that, and then there's also a part of me that is working towards getting into some more corporate work, where I can bring the emotional intelligence into companies. Like, I think every company, instead of having a sleeping room, should have an anger room.
Right. That's really cool, Kristen. But all of those things are exciting. And is there anything else before we draw the conversation to a close that you want to share with people who might be listening, or anything that we haven't hit that feels important?
Well, I was kind of saying this before, and I don't know why it's in the top of my mind just right now today. I was telling this to somebody yesterday. It's like, those who don't quit win.
Yeah. Those who don't quit win. Beautiful way to finish. Kristen, it's been like such a pleasure to spend time with you again after what feels like a long time, and really exciting to hear about what you've got coming up and what you've been up to. And thanks for sharing
Thanks,
so
Robbie.
much.
Thank you. This was fun. It's always fun for me to
Yeah.
connect with you and share a little bit of my journey.
Yeah, I think people are going to love hearing it. So thanks very much, and see you again.
Thank you.